tell her story of her time in China and other places as well. I'm going to let Erin get right to her story since you're here to hear her, not me. Please welcome Erin O'Neil.
Alrighty, so how's everyone doing?
Good.
Thank you for joining. Shout out to anyone watching on Facebook Live. I really appreciate you guys tuning into this. So this is part 2 of a 3-part series about my adventures through Asia last year. Fun fact, exactly 1 year ago today I was hanging out with pandas in Chengdu, China. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that today. So just a brief overview. Last time I kind of talked about what it was like to get settled into a foreign country without really knowing the groundwork or having any communication skills, since I do not speak any Asian dialect. And I talked a little bit about what took me to Asia to begin with. So it was a job. I was recruited right out of college to work digital media for a small company over in Shanghai. In that, I was promised a lot of paid travel, equipment, really great learning experiences, moments that would help grow not only my career but also continue to grow my personal development. Unfortunately, I like to think of it like this. This is a common snack that you'll find in Shanghai. This was my expectation going into it. You know, gooey middle, really chocolate-filled, delicious snack. And this was kind of the reality of it. Disappointing. So I went through a lot of hard decisions, and I ultimately came to the choice of quitting my job 3 months into it, out of a 6-month project span, and decided to just travel. So I had a couple different options. I could have bailed and gone home, but I decided to pack a backpack and head to Western China. So this presentation is a little bit about my adventures through Western China and the things that I saw. The most important part to me about travel is the people. So that is the emphasis that I want to make through these presentation series. But I want you to walk away with a few key things that you should see if you find yourself in China, or things that you should recommend to others. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of travel tips, and then we'll go in and talk about the people. So Shanghai alone taught me all of these words. This was in the presentation last week. If you missed it, it is on Facebook. Feel free to contact me for the link. But open-mindedness was one of the key words that I walked away from. So Shanghai as a city alone taught me a lot about myself and how to navigate a world that I didn't quite understand. So when I made the decision to start traveling alone, I felt prepared because I had already spent 3 months immersed in a world that I had to practice these concepts every day. So I felt prepared when I started traveling. This was the path that I decided to take. So I was living in Shanghai. I decided to take a train to Xi'an and spend a few days there, and then on to Lanzhou, where I didn't actually stay, but I spent the day trekking across the city from one train station to the other, and then got on an overnight train to Dunhuang, out in the Gobi Desert. I really just wanted to go to the Gobi Desert, and that sounded like a cool place to go, so I went, sure, sounds good. And then I took a flight from Dunhuang to Chengdu, took a day trip down to Lishan, and then I went back to Shanghai. This whole trip took about 2.5 weeks. So I really didn't know how to book a trip through China, so I literally just went, hey Google, help. Which, by the way, if you're using Google in Asia, you need to use a VPN, and I chose ExpressVPN. I could go into great detail about these tips, but honestly, it's probably not very applicable right now. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out or message me. I'd be happy to give you the lowdown. So I just typed in things to do in Xi'an, things to do in Dunhuang, and I kind of put together an itinerary from there. These were 3 of the key apps and or websites that I used. So trip.com used to be Ctrip. It used to be specifically for travel in Asia, and they've since expanded to include the UK and Germany. Okay, Germany. So they've changed their name to trip.com. But it's a great resource for, it's basically like Expedia, but it's a great resource for flights, hostels, and things to do. And then Hostel World was the other go-to. If I couldn't find something that I didn't like on Ctrip, Hostel World was a good backup. And then Didi is a car booking app that I specifically used in Shanghai, but I used it to navigate from my accommodation to the airport or train station, wherever I needed to go. So it was basically like Uber in Asia. So these were some of my non-negotiables when I was looking for a hostel. I needed internet access because of the nature of the work that I was doing. I also wanted my mom to know that I wasn't dead. So I decided that I needed internet access. I wanted to keep up with my blogging and post videos and keep everyone in the loop. I also wanted to know that it had a good traveler rating and that it was reasonably priced, because the entire rest of my stay in Asia, for 2.5 months, I only had $2,000. So I needed to make sure that it was going to fit into my budget, and I was going to be able to work with that. So I didn't want to stay in a $2 hostel if it meant that the ratings were a 1 and there were bed bugs everywhere. So you have to find that happy medium balance. I wanted it to be close to public transportation, because if I had to walk an hour to a bus station, it wasn't going to be very viable for the short amount of time that I had in that city. I also wanted storage lockers, because I wanted to protect my stuff. I had a lot of equipment with me, my computer, my GoPro. So I didn't take a whole lot of valuables, but what I did have, I wanted to make sure that if I went out for the day, it was protected. So that's something that you don't often think about, but storage lockers are always a good go-to. And then I personally didn't have a towel or a pillowcase or sheets or anything, so I wanted to find a place that everything there was either provided or available for rent. Don't typically think about that, but it was something that I fell into. And then bonuses, if they had breakfast, it was a yes. And if they had airport transfers, either to or from, most of the times they were free or a very low rate, then I was definitely in. So just some thoughts about booking hostels. So the first place that I went to was Xi'an. It was a 7-hour ride by train from Shanghai to Xi'an. Fun fact, I took a Rubik's Cube, and in the 7 hours, I did learn how to solve that thing. So, if you're bored. It was about $100 for a second class ticket. It has your basics, it's got a bathroom on it, it's got hot water, it has a food cart. I didn't really recognize anything that was available to eat in the food cart, so I stuck to Clif Bars, but it has a lot of available foods and snacks and things. This was the hostel that I stayed at, called Hanten House. It was about 10 minutes to the metro and 2 minutes walking distance to a bus. It had a really great atmosphere. It was very homey, kind of darker, very comforting though. It had storage lockers, as you can see, and everything was included. And it also had guided tours as well as programming. So they had learned how to make dumplings, learned how to play mahjong, and then they also had a lot of guided tours to like the terracotta warriors and places around Xi'an. So I picked them because they were a very good rate. It was $5 a night for a bed in an all-female dorm. So the 3 things that I would recommend doing is the Drum Tower and Bell Tower. That was about a 15-minute walk from our hostel. The Terracotta Army, it's a further ride, but incredibly worth it. And then the city walls and Wild Goose Pagoda, so I just kind of discovered those as I was walking around the city one day. This is in the Muslim quarter, right outside the Drum Towers. So the Muslim quarter and the Drum Towers, this was one of the towers kind of in the middle of a large roundabout. It was really cool to walk in there. There's tons of history and a lot of ancient artifacts to check out. And then right below it is an entire strip that is just bustling with food and markets. And the Muslim quarter is occupied by, the last I read was about 20,000 Muslims. And all of the stores on that strip are owned by Muslim families. So it's really cool to walk around and get delicious food and see a lot of rich culture along the way. I also went to a fish spa. Weird, very weird. If you've ever had fish eat at your feet, it's weird. Went to the Terracotta Warriors. Honestly, I just don't have words because it's just so cool. Seeing this in person was such a phenomenal experience. And I had to make a tough decision at one point because I really wanted to do what is called the Washout Death Trail, which is as scary as it sounds. It's up really high on a mountain, and you're tethered to the mountain, and you have to just belay down the path. And the wood planks are about that wide. And so when I told my parents I was going to do this, they went, "No, you're not," because it's just a straight drop down into the valley. And so originally I was going to do that and the Terracotta Warriors, but due to some confusion with translation, I had to pick one or the other, and I'm very glad that I chose this. Also because that means that I'm standing before you. Some more pictures of the Terracotta Warriors. I did go on a guided tour of this, and I definitely recommend it. I was going to go by myself, but going on the guided tour helped me make connections and learn a little bit more into the history of it rather than just walk around. And luckily they have signs in English, but having it told to me was a lot more impactful. And then this is walking around the city. So this is on the city walls. This is in Wild Goose Pagoda Park. And then this is one of the Wild Goose Pagodas. So it's just a really beautiful city. I mean, I just ended up walking around aimlessly, and things just kind of fell into my path, and we just kept walking around, and I kept finding elements that were beautiful and rich and quite hilarious. The thing that I wonder is who made them put this sign there. In Lanzhou, I had a plan. It was to go from this train station, which I arrived at from Xi'an, to this train station where I would wait to take my overnight train to Dunhuang, which was about a 14-hour ride, I believe. But it ended up looking a little bit more like this. Because I got lost and I realized that I had a lot of time to kill. So this video is the result of that. So far so good. I'm lost. At least I'm still in the train station, but I'm trying to find bus 132 and there are no signs with 132 on it. So I asked the security guard and he just did a bunch of these things speaking in Chinese, and I was like, that's really not helpful to me. It doesn't really matter where I go, I guess, because I have 6 hours to kill. So let's figure this out. I'm not really sure what this is or how I ran into it, but it's cool. That, my friends, is a sheepskin raft. Interesting. So I just went into a little fruit shop to get a banana after lunch, and I went to go pay and I asked her how much, and she was just like, no, for free, you can have it for free. So got a banana. This is not for claustrophobic people. So waking up to this site was a culture shock in of itself, because I had been living in cities for 4 months, and all of a sudden there was nothing but desert. And this audio was what you heard, so it was just quiet. So I knew that this would be a more interesting place to be. So I'll tell you about my moment of panic before I got on this train. I booked this train thinking, well, that'll be a really cool adventure. I've never been on an overnight train before. And I did book, I booked a sleeper car. So I booked I think it was a first class sleeper car, because it had storage for my stuff in the compartment itself. So most of the sleeper trains, if you do an economy class ticket, your stuff is just on a shelf somewhere in a large open car. So So I wanted to make sure that my stuff was with me, and I also have horrible insomnia and really bad at sleeping in transportation of any kind. So I thought, well, I'll see if I can at least try to get some sleep and have a more comfortable sleeping situation. So I booked that car, and then as I was standing in the train station waiting for, waiting for my departure time, I realized that I didn't know what was on the train. Was there even a bathroom? Was there hot water? Was there a food cart? Was there electrical outlets? I realized that I didn't know any of this stuff. And so what I didn't show you was the blackmail videos of me freaking out in a train station going, I have no idea what I just got myself into. But I already had the ticket and I had to keep going, so I got on board, and it actually ended up being very nice. They did have hot water spigot, but that's about it. So if you like boxed noodles, this is a good trip for you, because that's really all you eat. And then they had electrical outlets on every sleeper bunk, and then they had a bathroom. General rule for Asia, take your own toilet paper, everywhere. Just take it, just in case. So I got to the train station, and I couldn't find, this guy kept calling me on my phone, and speaking to me in rapid Mandarin, and I had no idea what he was saying. So thankfully, my confusion kind of alerted the couple that was sleeping below me. And he just kind of said, give me the phone, give me the phone. So I handed the phone over to him. He talked a lot to this guy on the other end. And apparently it was the driver for the hotel trying to find me. But it didn't dawn on me that he would call me, because I said very clearly, no Chinese, no Mandarin in my reservation. And so thankfully, this man, out of the kindness of his heart, not only helped me find my driver, but also carried all of my things through the train station for me. So I couldn't talk to him, I couldn't thank him, really, but the strangers that I met along the way of this trip really came through for me. So this is a hotel that I don't know how to pronounce, but it's also called the Aegean Sea Hotel. When I was trying to find this again to find you pictures of it, I couldn't find it on Google, and I don't know how I ended up locating it, but this hotel is very difficult to find on any hotel booking website. So if you find it, snag it, because it's a 5-star hotel for $22 a night. Amazing. But apparently they like to just keep it a secret. So obviously not my room, I don't want a Pikachu doll, but this was what the room looked like. I liked that it was 5 minutes to the bus station, and it was really 5 minutes from any part of town. It was very good security-wise. It had smart doors, so if you left the door open, when you leave the hotel room, if it doesn't close all the way, it'll start beeping really loudly at you. So that had a conflict. And then it was a very quiet, serene location just outside of the town where I had everything that I needed. My favorite things to do were go to Mogao Caves, and then Ming Sha Shan and Crescent Lake. And then I stumbled upon Millennium Dunhuang Buddhism Culture Park. So this is a picture of the Mogao Caves. You can't take pictures inside of the caves. These are rich with history and have phenomenal arts and tons of manuscripts inside of the caves themselves. So this is also known as Thousand Buddha Caves. So I did a guided tour of this as well, because that's the only way that you're able to see that. If you're going during peak season, you really need to buy tickets in advance. Luckily, I was going during the end of that season, so I could easily get an English tour. This is the view of Crescent Lake and Ming Sha Shan from the road. If you can imagine driving a bus into this view, it was just astounding. So I went to the desert and had some fun climbing really long rope ladders. I've never really been to a desert before, so I didn't really know what to expect. Some people were walking around with bags on their shoes. I just went barefoot. But the sands were like nothing I've ever experienced before, and the entire landscape was just still. It was truly phenomenal. So you have Ming Sha Shan, this sand mountain right here, and then down here is Crescent Lake. It's a little water paradise in the middle of the desert. I also met a camel and went sledding. This didn't have as climactic of an ending as I kind of wanted, but it was a little terrifying in spots. I think the only other people doing this were like 5-year-olds. So I was embracing my inner child. I decided when I was done in that area, so that's kind of at the end of a road, and then you kind of have to walk back this way to get to my hotel. And it would have been about a 30-minute walk, but I said, well, I can get a bus or a taxi anywhere. So I just started walking back towards my hotel to see what I found along the way, and I stumbled upon this, and it was like empty. There was no one walking around. The store owners were maybe there, maybe not. And I felt like I was intruding, but it ended up being a really cool culture park with a lot of handmade goods and locally owned shops. And it wasn't like those usual tourist streets where every stall is selling the same thing. They all had something very unique to offer. And so I would like to highlight this one particularly because when you search for things to do, it doesn't necessarily come up in the top lists. I don't know how many people really know about this place when you're trying to hit the key ones. So this is another reason why when I travel, I don't just want to make an itinerary and skip over all of the little things in between, because I find treasures like this that were quite incredible to walk around. So at this point, I was over here, and then I took a flight from Dunhuang to Chengdu. Guys, I just went to see the pandas, I'm going to be totally honest. I really just wanted to see pandas. So this was the hostel that I stayed at. They had security lockers, they had tons of tours and things that I could do. They also had food. It was $8 a night. It was about 6 minutes walk to the metro station, and it was really in the heart of the city. So Chengdu was a little bit of a culture shock coming out of Dunhuang, where I was the only white person for miles. There was no English really spoken at all. I had to use Google Translate for just about everything. And then I dropped into the heart of Chengdu, where there were cars everywhere. It was like being dropped into New York City after you've been out in the country. It was kind of alarming. But the good news is it was close to just about everything that I wanted to do. So of course, we went to go see the Chengdu Panda Base. I went to Zhenli Pedestrian Street for some food, and then we took a day trip to Washout. So for your viewing pleasure. So then I went to Zhenli Street, where I learned how frightening it is that China has so many foods on sticks. Because you're walking about this close to people, and women have hair, and these things are sticky. And just general, like in a culture where spatial awareness is not one of the best traits, they have a lot of foods on sticks. And they're not dull sticks, they have points at the end. So, but I had some very good food, very interesting foods. These are caramelized strawberries. This is basically a spicy hot dog is the best way that I can describe it. And then this is potato, so potato chips with a lot of pepper on them. Still don't quite know what this one was, or really this one, but they were good. Do you know what they are?
That's rice. That's caramelized rice.
Okay, cool. You know what
It's
this one
good.
is?
I had that one. No.
Okay. I ate this one, but I don't know what it was.
The strawberry one was that was caramelized with rice. Sugar.
See, the things I learned when I talked to Eleanor. But in case you were worried, there are still Starbucks everywhere. Eleanor and I took a trip to Lashan, which was one of the most phenomenal and impactful experiences of the entire journey. So we took a boat out to go see the world's second tallest Buddha. First? I thought there was one more. First or second, tallest Buddha. I could take a nap in its ear, it'd probably be pretty comfortable. This is a layout of the Buddha laying down, which our tour guide Patrick so thankfully informed us that the Buddha laying down is male. Patrick then took us into, so Eleanor and I actually took a personal guided tour, which at first really deterred me because I thought that it was going to be, we were standing on a boat with bright orange life vests going, oh my God, we're just another tourist, with a loud group of other white Westerners. And those life vests seemed to symbolize much more than just our safety. It also seemed to separate us from the kind of connection that we wanted to make with people. But then Patrick took us to this village, and we started walking around. And first of all, we got a delicious meal for lunch, which included water buffalo, which is very good. So we walked through this village, and we met a lot of the people along the way, and then we ended up in the tea fields that evening, picking tea and making our own. So it was a very immersive experience, all in all. And Patrick is actually well known on TripAdvisor, which we didn't find out until the end, but he was very helpful. So that kind of leads me into the extraordinary stories of ordinary people. So none of these places would have been the way that they were without the people that I met along the way. So as much as I love to give you the top 10 places to see or how to pick the best hostel, that's not really where my heart is. My heart is with the people who picked up the phone and helped me find my car, even though they had very little idea who I was or what I was doing alone in China. I'm pretty sure they thought I was off my rocker because they're like, you're crazy to come out here without being able to communicate. So this was the first woman that I met. I met her on the train to Xi'an, and she took me under her wing in a way that I don't think many strangers would. Our friendship started because I was really bored after figuring out how to solve my Rubik's Cube. And she was scrolling through her social media, and she was looking at a post about dad bod fanny packs. Have you guys seen those? They're fanny packs, but they look like a stomach, so the person wearing them looks like they have like a dad bod. It's hilarious. I'm regretting not putting a picture here, but you look it up later, it's hilarious. So she was looking at that, and she was laughing to herself, and I think I let out a little bit of a laugh, and she kind of went, and she caught me looking at her social media. But then she noticed that I was interested, and so she started opening up all of her translating apps and texting me her information and asking me where I was going and why I was alone and all of these things. And so we kind of talked through Translator, and then I get up and I go to try to find the food cart, but like I said, I didn't really understand what any of that food was, and it just didn't appeal to me at the time, so I came back empty-handed with, well, I got a bottle of tea. And all of a sudden she started to text me, are you hungry? Do you want food? I'll buy you something. Let's go together. You can't be hungry. I'll buy you whatever you want. I'll give you food. She literally offered me a bite of this burrito-looking thing that she was eating. I mean, she was eating it, and she literally went, want some? I was like, that's okay. That's fine. And then she handed me this yellow package with this image on it, and it was like vacuum-sealed mystery meat. But she was being so sweet. She just wanted to take care of me. She wanted to make sure that I was fed and well. And we had bonded over listening to her. She was showing me choir videos of her from her hometown, telling me all about her history, education, and how she was going to this conference for the kids. And she was just being so nice, so I said, okay, I'll eat this weird mystery meat. So I opened the package, and it like literally slides out. And I can't tell if there's a bone in it or not. And she just kind of goes like this, like careful. So I try to like take a little nibble from it, and it's super spicy. And at this point I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm eating mystery meat on the train next to a woman I can't talk to. And I made the mistake, I mean it was good, it was all right, but I really didn't want more. And I made the mistake of when she looked at me expectantly going, do you like it? I went, yeah. So she gave me a whole pack of mini packs of mystery meat that I then carried with me in my backpack. But then a beautiful moment happened when we started to get off the train in Xi'an, and she pointed outside the window, and she looked at me with no coat, or it was a light jacket, and she went, and I went, well, I don't know what the weather's supposed to be like. I thought it was going to be like Shanghai, where it was nice and warm. It was a nice 60, 70 degrees outside, and I was wearing this. And so we walk off the train, and then she points me in the right direction, and then she goes, wait. And she opens the zipper of her suitcase, and she pulls out that yellow scarf. And she wraps it around my neck and goes like this. And we exchanged no words, but she wanted to keep me fed and keep me warm. Those were her two priorities. And this was a stranger that I couldn't even really think. And so still to this day, I will text her pictures of this scarf, and she just sends me back happy little stickers. And I went and got a coat. And I sent her a picture of my brand new coat so that she could see that I was keeping myself warm. I did the stereotypical thing and decided to do some yoga on the sand dunes because I thought it looked really cool. And this woman was kind of watching me from a distance and sneakily taking pictures of me. And then all of a sudden she kind of approached me and she went like this. I was like, okay, sure. So we started doing yoga together. could not communicate, but it turned out to be some really cool pictures. And then I think, I didn't include the one of her son. Her son's in the background of some of them, just kind of going, yeah. And then she posted on social media later, we friended each other on WeChat, and she was posting all about must learn English, yoga with friends on dunes, and it warmed my heart to see that tiny moment left such an impact in her day. And so it meant even more to me because I knew that she walked away feeling like she had found friendship. This motley crew is from the restaurant outside of my hotel in Dunhuang. My room wasn't quite ready, and so I just kind of wandered outside, and there wasn't really a whole lot else except for the hotel right there. And I was kind of hungry, so I was just walking down the street, and this woman here flagged me down and said, "Come on in, come on in." And so I walked in, and I mean, the most intimidating thing for me in Asia was to walk into a restaurant with no pictures, because I had no idea what any of the words meant, and Google Translate only works so well. So they literally walked me around to every table where people were eating and pointed at different foods and said, this. And I went, sure, sounds good. So eventually they find me some food and they put it in front of me and I'm eating it happily and they're just like sitting there watching me. Like, she's eating food. And so they start writing me notes in Chinese, which obviously I can't read, so I start translating it. The moment I pulled out Google Translate, they went bonkers. They've never seen anything that I can scan a photo of and then it will translate it for me. They were losing their minds. So they started writing me all different kinds of things on different pieces of paper and just wanting to watch me translate it. Definitely couldn't communicate with them. I had no idea what they were saying. So they took care of me that entire trip. The next morning when I came back for breakfast, they just kept bringing me food because they just wanted to keep me fed. And I think this one was flirting with me, but I didn't. This was a group of people in Chengdu. I decided to make some Chinese decor with them. There's like herbs on the inside. Did we ever figure out what these are called? I can't remember.
Hanging floral decoration, I think.
They're used for traditional celebrations. And so I decided, well, I don't really have anything else to do tonight, so I'll make a craft. This guy showed up very late, so did this girl. So it was pretty much just me and a bunch of other people who couldn't speak English to me. So I had to learn how to do a craft simply by watching and then slapping my hand when I wasn't doing it right. But it was very interesting, and they kind of just took me in, and it was a group effort to make sure that I was getting the right thing done, because those are surprisingly more difficult to make than I thought they would be. So this was a crew in Washout. So when Eleanor and I started walking through Washout, through the villages, we started to meet some people along the way. This was 90% of the scene, walking around Washout, people playing dominoes and cards, and just kind of hanging out outside on their front porches. They would let us watch and kind of bring us into their game. This was a woman who was weighing a package of noodles from the market that she had just purchased. She was telling us all about the door on the front of her house that had been taken by the Red Guards during the Cultural Revolution. So you could tell on her face how devastated she was that her beautiful front door was missing, and how frustrated she was that now she had this bland wooden door out front. But she watched curiously as Patrick translated these stories to us, and kind of allowed us to hear her story and learn from it. This was a barber who converted the outside of his house into a barber shop. You see the prices up there. And he was shaving a client's face. Patrick translated for us and told us that this chair belonged to his great-great-grandfather. It was since handed down in generations so that the family business could continue. He offered to cut our hair. We said no thanks. This was a woman mixing herbs and spices on a tarp in her garage. Eleanor can pick out most of what was in here. I was just kind of standing baffled as she smelled things and identified them. And this was a pair of sisters making duvets, hand-making duvets, by threading string on a pole across a giant platform. How many of you would believe me if I said that they can make a full one of these in an hour? They do it. Oh, we need to stop. Yay! So we went to visit this older gentleman who owned a funerary supply shop. So the brief overview is the Chinese believe that when you die, you go into an afterlife. And so they will burn paper and plastic items on the gravestone to help you transition into your afterlife. And so they'll burn paper money, clothes, cars, apparently MacBooks and iPhones and luxury houses, and it's gotten really fancy over the years. But this man sold the supplies for funerary celebrations. And so he was very adamant about showing us how his abacus worked. And so we put down an equation here, and he got to work showing us. And the smile on this man's face when he got the same number on Ellie's iPhone calculator was just beautiful. But he said he was so grateful that we stopped by, and that we reminded him of his great-granddaughters, and that he wanted us to stay and hang out. This was a couple who took us into the tea gardens and taught us how to produce really good tea. They showed us the entire process from picking them off of the bushes to preparing them in the kiln and then rolling them and making them. Eleanor probably could tell you the entire process by heart, but they were very welcoming and brought us into their home and allowed us to sit with them and drink their tea and learn their stories. He was especially adamant about teaching us. And this guy was one of our favorites because he's squatting lower than any child really can squat. And he just dropped down into that squat where he stayed there for probably about 20 minutes, just showing us and working the tea leaves. But then when he got up to walk, it was like... So it shows you what position they spend most of their time in, which is squatting. And then this gentleman was 92 years old, and we were sitting in his home having tea with him. And Patrick was translating the story to us. And the long-running joke in the neighborhood with this man is that people will ask him how tall he is, and he says, 5'9", and they say, no, you're 4 foot, only a boy. Because when you look into his eyes, you can tell that his mind is like a child's. He was so mesmerized by the simplistic things around him and kind of absent-mindedly walking around and not very connected. And so they explained to us that his mind was starting to go. But he came over and he sat and he confirmed the stories that Patrick was telling us, that the house had been built by his great-grandfather. He had been born there, and when he was younger, during the Cultural Revolution, his brother disappeared, and his mother, for years, I think 32 years, 34 years, burned paper money, paper clothes. She burned these things to send to her lost son because she was convinced that he was dead. And then, right before she passed, she received a letter. 5 years? It was only 5? Okay. Before she passed, she received a letter from her son that said, "I'm alive and well in Taiwan." And so she now rests in the house back there with a picture of her son. And he was just so busy lighting this pipe and trying to get it lit that he was totally in his own world. But he still allowed us to come into his home, and he told us about his history and his family's history. And hearing these stories from Patrick, who knows this man very well, was quite a phenomenal thing to hear. So We Read is the book that I'm writing, and it's about all of the details of these people that I met along the way. So this is only one of the 2 presentations where I really go into people that I met and the people who impacted my life. So I'm currently working on narrating all of these stories for you in great detail, and explaining the connection between each of them and the lessons that they taught me. Because unfortunately, if I went into every single one right now, it would go on for hours, and you'd never leave. So this book is going to be the dense version of what these people truly meant to me and what they taught me. But amongst all of the things that they taught me, it was trust. It's funny because I was thinking about this today over my lunch break, and I was thinking, if I were listening to this presentation, what's the question that I would ask? And it would be, how did I learn to trust these people? How did I open myself up and hand that man my phone and follow him out of a train station? How did I trust that he was going to get me to the right place? And I realized that I didn't. I trusted them because I trusted myself to figure it out. And so frequently when we think about trusting others, we think, I trust you, so it's your responsibility not to break me. And if you think about it, when someone breaks your trust, it feels like a personal attack. And so much of my life I've had bitterness towards the people who have broken my trust. But in all reality, my trust in them was a trust in myself that I was going to be okay after that happened. So trusting others isn't about handing your life over to them and expecting nothing or expecting everything in return. It's expecting nothing in return and trusting yourself to come out of it a lot better, happier, stronger, healthier. So think about a time that someone broke your trust, and think about whether or not you were trusting yourself. Because if they had the power to hurt you, you weren't trusting yourself enough to work through it. And I realized all this over 30 minute lunch break. I was just like, whoa, cool. So when you trust people, you're really saying, I trust you because I trust myself that even if you hurt me, I'm going to be okay. So whether or not these people actually got me to the right place, I just had to go along and trust that it was going to either work out or I was going to be pushed in a different direction. And that's what this whole book is about the fact that I might not have been given the right directions. I left my home life for 6 months from the States and trusted that that guy was going to take me and take care of me and take me to all these different countries and introduce me to all these different people and pay me $7 an hour, but supplement it with paid travel all around the world. And he broke that trust. And it wasn't until I realized that I trusted myself to make something of it that I still trusted him. He didn't follow through, but I was able to trust myself in the process, and that was the best lesson that I could have learned. Eleanor. Eleanor is from the UK. Hi, say hi. I met her in Xi'an, in the hostel. This was my first time staying in a hostel dorm. And so it was a great comfort to know that I had another fellow traveler that I could communicate with. And so she kind of guided me through some of the things to do in Xi'an, and then we ended up meeting up for our day trip to Washout. And we became really good friends. And so learning all these stories kind of brought us together, and she herself this was her first time traveling with a backpack, kind of going through Asia alone. Do you have a story of trust? Did you think about a moment that you had to practice true trust? It's okay if you don't have an answer. I'm like kind of putting you on the spot.
Okay, I'll give you one. Do you want me to go there? Okay. Well, can I just back up just a little bit?
Yeah.
To when we were in Xi'an?
Yeah.
So when I first met Erin, the first impression was that really sad little face that I had when she came off the train. Because this one. This is unhappy Erin, right? This is what I meant. The only reason why I was in that dorm, because I didn't actually book female dorm. Oh, he offered it to me and went, oh, okay. In that moment, not only did I meet this one, she was, by the way, on her own in a corner on a computer, and we kind of went, oh, okay, not sure how that one's going to work out. But I actually met a girl whose brother is 2 years below me and went to my school, who happened to just walk into the dorm at the same time. Again, completely spontaneous, no idea why I'm looking, but yeah. Okay, let me see, trust story. Okay, also, okay, kind of trust. So I had a really, really bad experience with a train. What I've been told by a couple of other people who had been travellers, because I used to work for a travel company, was you need to write a diary because you're going to forget things. Photos are only going to do so much. Okay, Erin has videos of me doing weird stuff. She still has them, and she hasn't shown me them, and I'm quite scared. So I had booked through a company similar to Sea Trip called China Highlights, all my train journeys through China. So I thought, oh, I'll be fine. It's my first 12-hour trip, overnight. Okay, let's see how this goes. Thankfully, we had WeChat, and she had filmed what it was like, so I knew I was going to be fine. Apart from the fact that I had to get up at 5 in the morning, get myself to a completely different station from Xi'an. I was going from Xi'an to Chengdu. And When I got there, first of all, I had to keep myself awake enough in the taxi that he was taking me to the right station, because it was in the middle of nowhere. First trust. Second trust was to be able to actually get myself on that train. The train didn't exist at all. It wasn't running, and I still don't know why. Because there were little signs with the little train code on them, still in the building, but it wasn't going. And they just went, no. Okay. And again, problems because don't speak the language. There is an offline application, I think it's Microsoft, that I used, where you can type in and it will give you exactly the reply. So that was how I was communicating. And again, there happened to be a very nice person who randomly started helping me out. I think because I was at the start of line, the queue, not the line. Oh, translation. Right. And I just wasn't budging until they dealt with me. And I think he may have got cross with me and just was like, fine, I'm going to deal with this person. So what they then did was sold me another ticket for a train that took 15 hours, that left from a completely different station at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's what they said. What they didn't say was that it was a hard sleeper, which means sharing a bedroom space with 30 people and having dorm-style rooms, but beds that are 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh my God.
And 1 bathroom. And 1 tap thing. So I worked this out once I'd gone, okay, I need to do the grown-up thing, get myself back to the hostel, and at least I have a base there, I've got Wi-Fi there, I've got food there, and I can set myself out again. So when I did that, I then Googled everything and worked out, no. I have some boundaries. I'm not doing that. Because the fact that I am female and have blonde hair means that people in China do this. And I will demonstrate this by this. This is not even half as close. They will get so close that they will quite happily touch you. When I'm reading, they were actually looking over my shoulder. They would turn round when you were eating to watch you. And it's very, very disconcerting because we don't do that at all. They very much get into the bubbles that we have created for ourselves. So I basically had the question of, do I trust myself with the money that I have to make the call of, actually I'll go and get a flight. So I went and got a flight. It was about $80, and it was going at 8:30 in the evening.
8:30 in the evening.
So I somehow got myself there from my hostel, which was nearby, to Erin's hostel, because a Dutch family was leaving at the same time, and they were like, yeah, come with us, come with us. And when I was saying, oh, I'll pay for my side, they were like, no, don't worry, it's fine. Okay, cool, you save me some money, I'll not anything. I exchanged sweets, I think, with the children. So I got there, and then the first thing that I hear is my plane is delayed by an hour. Okay, that's fine. I had a transfer at the other end who were waiting for me to take me from the airport to the hostel. Okay, so I messaged them because I've got Wi-Fi in the airport. Cool. And then because the plane was coming from Harbin, which is very, very, very far north, and there's fog, it can't take off, which means it can't land, which means that I left the airport at 1:30 in the morning. At this point, I'd been up for over 25 hours, and then, of course, as soon as I'm on the plane, I have 20 minutes on the plane, and I go out like light, and then they wake me up, because it's time to land. That was fun. So my ultimate panic was the fact that I had to trust that the guy who was going to take me to the hostel was still at the other end. Because at this point, it's 3 in the morning, and they have no transport, nothing, and I'm going, okay, I might have to just stay in an airport and see how this goes. So I had to trust that he would be there, And he had a little tiny sign. And he looked at me once I got off, because my bag was, of course, the last one to come off the conveyor belt. That is what you call it? Yeah. Okay, good. And he looked at me and he was smoking and he offered me his cigarette. Clearly, it looked like I needed something. And I went, And he went, That was it. That was the exchange I had. And then, of course, I had the slight more panic that I then had to keep myself awake for the journey, because this was a complete stranger and he might just take me somewhere random. That again, trust issues, but if you've got a little safety net which is mapped for me, if you have it, it's really good. If you don't have it, get it. It works everywhere. I've been using it here. And then I got to the other end and I had to trust that they would let me in. Because at that point it's 5 in the morning and I'm tapping on the door and this guy is in a kind of cot bed and I just see him sit up, which freaks me out entirely because he just looks like a ghost because he's in the duvet itself. And he drags out this small 14-year-old girl from somewhere who just looks like she's been really heavily asleep and shuffling around in, I think it was Hello Kitty pajamas. It was quite disturbing. And I'm profusely apologising and trying to sort of say, is it okay? And they go, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Like, no idea what's going on, but she just did, and I was fine. But all of that was to do with trust and the fact that I had to trust other people and trust that I could get myself there at the end of it. Yeah, okay, I didn't sleep. But what I then did that next day was I allowed myself a day off. What I'd been doing all the time was pushing and going, okay, I want to do this today, I want to do this today, I want to do this today. And I realised I couldn't do that. So that day I spent the entire day in the hostel. I had French toast at 5 p.m. for my breakfast. And I found that the hostel had kittens. So I was fine.
Did you have to tell yourself something when you're sitting in that car and he's driving, assuming God knows where, did you have to tell yourself anything to keep calm? And
I had my mom's voice in my head.
Okay. I think I had a similar thing.
Yeah. Going, you'll be fine. You can fix it. That was it.
Did you ever feel unsafe traveling around as a single female traveler?
No. There were slightly weird, scary moments when you realised you probably shouldn't be walking where you were. And then you tried not to speed up, because that would make you seem slightly worse off. Suspicious? No, I think just scared. Otherwise, probably it was more to do with just being aware of the space thing and not looking at certain. Eye contact is a massive thing. People don't give you eye contact, or I didn't think. Or you just had children running at you and giving you hugs, and you're going, I don't know you. You've got a small child attached to you.
What do you feel like comparing yourself to the person you were before this trip and then after this trip? And besides Xi'an and Chengdu, she went other places. What do you feel like was the biggest takeaway for you personally? For me, it was being vulnerable. I feel like I'm a lot more adept at practicing vulnerability now and asking for help and for guidance. Do you feel like there was one or two things that you feel like you walked away with? I'm like putting those on.
Yeah, you are. One of the things was not only trusting in myself and that I could get myself out of it, but also that other people would be willing to help. This particularly happened in Japan because they are such a courteous people. Okay, Chinese story. I was in Nara. I think I was down to my last of my clothing that was clean. So I was trying to find a laundromat. Did you go there? And I had been told by the guy of the ryokan, so it was like an ancient tea house that I was staying at, that, oh yeah, there should be one here. He drew me a little map. Fine, okay. So I'm then walking around with a little bag, looking lost, and going in complete different direction than all the other tourists in the area. And this lady sees me, she's on her bike, she pedals sort of towards me, looks at me, and goes, "Are you okay?" I'm going, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to find a laundry." She's like, "Oh, okay. I don't think there is one around here." So instant, I was, "Oh, great, that's helpful." What she then does is gets off her bike, walks with me, asks people along the way, takes me to the laundromat that she finds, because it just looks like a shed. There's nothing there that would have like told me anything. Opens the door, tells me what things are where, tells me about the detergent, translates the instructions for me, checks the times for me, and then exchanges money with me to make sure that I had the correct amount. That in itself was amazing, because I thought she'd just go, "There you go," and just leave me. I could have probably worked some things out-ish, but I'd had to wing it. The most amazing thing was that half an hour later, she came cycling past, and she opened the door and checked on me again. That's the bit that made my mind completely trip, because I'm going, she had no reason to do that whatsoever. Back home, we'd have taken you somewhere and gone, "Here it is, we might have helped you out a little bit if there was something different, or we thought that it might be different from different countries. We would have then gone check on you afterwards." But the fact that she did that is completely blew my mind. So I guess that was an example of something like that.
So what Eleanor and I had long discussions about after was just, and especially after our trip to Washout, was just the fact that when you make yourself vulnerable and you admit that you're open to new experiences, and regardless of whether or not those experiences are going to be quote good or bad, which in the previous session I kind of highlighted how both of those experiences are good because you still get something out of it with the right perspective. That regardless of whether you're going to experiencing something good or bad, or whether someone was going to be helpful or completely unhelpful and just go like this and tell you in Mandarin where to go, all of those experiences are they're balanced out by the people who do this, by the people who take the extra time to take your arm and guide you somewhere and show you exactly where you need to go, exactly what you need to do, and then they follow up with you. I'm friends with so many of these people on WeChat that I don't talk to in English ever, but we've created a relationship simply out of practicing a similar vulnerability and a curiosity for each other and trusting each other to do good by us. And I think that was one of the largest takeaways that I think we both walked away from Asia with, was being able to practice those qualities and bring that into our everyday life. And now I'm working at Lifetime in Dublin, and it was kind of a transition job for me at the start, but I'm still there because I started to develop this relationship with people who walk through the doors. And a couple of these people can't speak English. And I realized that I'm friends with all of them. And every time they come around the corner, even though there's one guy, he's one of my favorites, his name is Peter. Not his original name, but it's his English name. And every morning around 10 o'clock, 10:30, he'll walk past my desk and go, "Good morning, have a nice day." Even though he's on his way in, and that's typically what we say on the way out. And I've tried a couple different times to ask, "Did you have a good workout?" Or, "Are you having a good day?" And he just says, "Nice to see you, good morning." And that tiny moment, because we recognize that there's a vulnerability in each of us. I can't really understand him, he can't really understand me, but we still smile at each other and we say hello and we acknowledge each other's existence, and we try to work together. So every time he has a question about anything regarding his membership or the club, he comes to me and I write it down, and he takes it home and he translates it. It's that one extra step that you can make that shows other people that you're open to their experiences and willing to share yours to help find a common ground. I think that's all the babbling that I have for you. But do you have any questions for either one of us?
You can ask anything. Like, we're past the point of.
Yeah, we're an open book.
Otherwise, we'll start asking each other questions.
Did you ever find out what meat was in there?
Oh, yes, it's duck neck jerky. I also, along the road, somehow have a packet of rabbit meat, At my apartment, I don't know where that came from either. Probably another thing like this.
I don't think you should open that.
I'm not going to. Any other questions? What's the weirdest food that you tried?
The water buffalo was pretty weird.
Really, that's weirdest?
Oh, no, I had an oyster. Well, I did, okay. The premise of what I was doing when I was going around, so I did 3 months and I did Japan, China, Hong Kong and Vietnam. So I basically didn't like swirl. And I'm quite a foodie. So what I did was every major place that I went to, I did a cookery course or I went to a tour or something like that. And that oyster, which by the way was this big, first time of me eating oysters, last time of me eating oysters, I'm not doing that again, was in Tsukiji Market in Tokyo, and it was fab. And all I was doing was almost like the same with Erin, so she did C-Trip, I did C-Trip and Booking.com and TripAdvisor to find these things. I mean, it was there when I used it. And I found these tour companies and things were $30, $40, and I was going, well, I'm going to get to learn all this stuff and get the recipes and meet new people and actually be in their lives and be able to ask questions like, I'm really sorry, but I can't use chopsticks very well, or actually, how am I meant to use soy sauce when I'm eating sushi? By the way, we all do it wrong.
She's going to start her own lecture series about food.
Hello.
I know Erin's answer. Did you eat anything live on a stick that was fried before giving it to you?
I did not eat anything that was alive. Why did you eat something? I didn't.
No, she
I
didn't eat it.
No, I didn't.
I know her
I
answer is
didn't.
no. I wasn't
My
sure if
answer
you
was
tried.
no, it's steered away from it. No. So there's a particular street, I can't remember the name of it, begins with W, in Chengdu. No, sorry, in Beijing, where they put things like scorpions and snakes and starfish. Seahorses is what I'm going with, actually. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Considering they're endangered, I was like, oh, and bugs, insects. Oh, yes. And just general wiggly things on sticks. The only reason they do that is for the tourists. No one else eats them. Really? Yeah. They do it for the fact that they can then sell it to us for about 5-10 times the price. And they take the little wiggly things and they just pick up the stick and they fry it right in front of you and then they hand it to you. Yep. And that's how you do it. I had a couple friends who tried it. I did not try it.
Start bleeding?
Hmm?
They start bleeding and then they cry.
Well, they just like,
Yes.
yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, it's like what people do lobsters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They scare down the
Any other questions?
You're allowed. We don't mind.
Maybe? That's all right.
Okay.
So, I'm going to keep up. Sorry, I just like got me in the eye again. Sorry. So this was the second out of 3 series. The next portion is I decided after China that I was going to go international. And so I went to Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Taiwan. And so that was I met a bunch of different people along the way as well. I found less of a language barrier, interestingly enough, but I did meet a lot of phenomenal people who continued to help guide my journey. So the next session is going to be about the international places that I went and the countries that I went to, and kind of another brief overview of a place that I stayed, a thing that I did, and what I learned from it. So I would encourage you to, I have a sign-up sheet back there if you'd like to put your email down. I don't spam you, I promise. I only have the energy to send out one email every once in a while. But I'll include a link to the first session if you haven't yet watched that. I'll also include a link to this session once we export the video for it, and then more information about Gui Ren and the book. So in case you weren't here for the last session, Gui Ren means it's a written Chinese phrase about the right people coming into your life at the right time to help guide you and mentor you. Whether or not you can speak the same language, they still have a way of connecting with you in vulnerability and helping to push you in the right direction. So that's that's the book that I'm currently working on and the entire concept of the series. So I would encourage you to come to the next one. It's going to be a little bit later, November 14th. Same place, same time at 7. So keep your eye out for that, and I would encourage you to put your email down so that I can stay in touch with you. And I'd love to take any questions after. Eleanor would as well, if you have any questions that you want to ask me. So thank you all for coming so much. I really appreciate it.